My name is Corey Van Brookhoven. I'm the president of Lititz Historical Foundation. And what a wonderful time of year to talk about ghost tales of Lititz. And we're going to go beyond just the downtown area. We're going to go on the outskirts of town and talk about some strange phenomenon, unexplained happenings, and of course, ghost sightings. Okay, so again, we're going to do question and answers at the end of the program. So I want to start off by starting in Lititz, and there will be some, certainly there will be some Lititz locations here to talk about. I want to begin here at the Lititz Springs Inn, which was formerly known as the General Sutter. It's located at the corner of Main and Broad Street. It dates back to 1764. And at least two people have died there over its long history. Whenever you have a long-standing business or establishment, especially a hotel like this, there's going to be good odds in your favor that someone's going to pass away, and that's exactly what happened. Two people have died there over the years. Now, if you've spent any time there, you know, and you maybe have seen this portrait of General John Sutter, which to this day, even though they changed the name, the portrait remains in the lobby. And this painting here on the right-hand side first arrived to the lobby in 1930 and was painted by a lady named Alice Malone. And they say that every time this painted is moved, it tends to stir up paranormal activity within the entire building, not just the lobby. People have seen shadows. People have seen orbs. People have heard loud crashes in the night throughout the hotel. People have heard footsteps upstairs when they know nobody's there. People have heard footsteps downstairs when nobody is down there. So certainly they have heard all kinds of things throughout throughout the years here in this hotel. And again, one of the things that seems to trigger paranormal activity for some reason is this painting, again, whenever it is moved or shifted. Now, going downstairs, there's a men's bathroom downstairs. And right where this photo was taken here on the right-hand side, somebody saw a shape or white mist in the shape of an old man with a white beard. He was spotted out of the person's corner of their eye, crossing from left to right in this hallway. So this is a hallway leading down to the men's bathroom. This door here on the right is the men's bathroom. And this right here, this empty space, is where the person saw this ghostly shape of a man with a white beard down in the bathroom of the hotel. Now, I'm going to talk about the silk stocking murder of 1939. Perhaps you heard of it, maybe you haven't. It involved a man who was infatuated with a woman, and his last name was Steely. And they ended up going out on a date, and he had some mental problems, and he eventually ends up strangling her with a silk stocking. That's where the name of this murder came from, the silk stocking murder. Now, even though they were both, her name was Lucille Smith, by the way, even though they were both from Lititz, the murder itself didn't happen in Lititz. Here they are, Earl Steely and Lucille Smith. See if I can move this little widget here so you can see the names. Earl Steely on the left, Lucille Smith on the right. I mentioned that earlier. Okay. So she was murdered by him by way of a silk stocking. And the murder actually took place along Sagluk Road in Clay Township, along the Horseshoe Trail, kind of near Middle Creek, if you're familiar with that. On your way to Middle Creek, anyway. It's down this road right here. Let me go back. I lost my mouse. There it is. This road goes back to a road that we'll see more of. But they drove back this country road. Of course, at the time, it was in the 1930s, and it was a rocky road back then. It wasn't paved like it is now. And that's where he committed the murder. This is around the spot, more or less, I understand, where the murder took place. You can see it's a wooded area here. If you keep driving back that lane that we saw in the last picture, this is about where the murder took place in 1939. Ever since then, whenever someone travels down that road, especially in the wooded area here, they see strange lights in the distance. People have even heard strange noises, screams, and cries of "help me." So, is it Lucille Smith's ghost? It might be. It might be. This murder, let me see if I can move this out of the way. Again, my apologies. This murder made the pages of the January 1940 edition of True, which was a true crime magazine. Here on the top right, that's the cover. Here on the right and on the left are pictures and articles of the crime scene. There's another picture of Earl Steely. There's Lucille Smith. And this police officer here on the bottom right, his name was Clarence Kreider, otherwise known as Boss Kreider. Okay, so these are pictures of the actual crime scene that appeared in this magazine here. And not only did it appear in this true crime magazine, it appeared in other crime and pulp magazines of the time. So it was a huge deal. It was made the news, the front page of all kinds of papers across Pennsylvania. Now, in that area down along Segluck Road is also supposed to be, I haven't confirmed it yet, but there's a lost 1700s graveyard somewhere near that area. These are unmarked graves of slaves who were employed as furnace men at a nearby furnace. And this isn't the picture that if you saw this earlier, this is actually the murder scene, or what we believe to be the murder scene. This isn't a picture of where the location of the cemetery is. Just so you know. Okay, let's go back to Lititz. Mary Dixon. Anyone ever hear of the Mary Dixon Chapel by Linden Hall? Um, well, sorry about that. She was born in 1863, and Mary attended Linden Hall and graduated in 1879. She did die of tuberculosis in 1882. She did not pass away at the school. Some people say she did. She did not. She would have graduated at the time. Okay, so she dies young at age 19 of tuberculosis. Okay, and her father, who's here in the middle, his name's George Dixon. He built the Mary Dixon Chapel that you see on the right-hand side there. You can still see it today along Main Street in Lititz. It was a gift from her father George in memory of his daughter. It was constructed between 1883 and 1885. Now, interestingly enough, there is something called Mary Dixon Day, which occurs every April 11th. The reason that came to be was because students would say they had seen Mary's ghost, which originally prompted a 2-hour delay at the school. So it's kind of a tradition that they kept throughout the year. So every year, I should say, on April 11th, the students of Linden Hall School for Girls have a 2-hour delay. It's called Mary Dixon Day. Unfortunately, George Dixon here, just as an aside, he did not see the completion of the construction of the chapel. He died in 1884. That's why it took 2 years to build this majestic chapel. So it began in 1883. He died, and it's under construction. He dies in 1884, and it's eventually completed in 1885. So again, he did not survive to see its completion. Now, does Mary Dixon haunt the halls of Linden Hall? Well, perhaps. Many students have claimed to have seen her or have heard strange things through the years. Now, we talked about Mary Dixon Day, how a modern day student saw her ghost, which prompted the Mary Dixon Day thing. But others have seen things that are unexplained throughout the years. Now, Stengel Hall, which is part of Linden Hall campus. Look at the picture here. Here on the left is Mary Dixon Chapel. Stengel Hall is here, of course, this bigger building. In this window where I have the arrow pointed at, a face and a silhouette of a woman has been seen at various times at this window. Is it Mary Dixon? Maybe is it another ghost? We're not sure, but at least one or two times someone has seen a face and the silhouette of a woman in this window here on the campus of Linden Hall. Now let's go to the Brothers House, a couple buildings to the west. Okay. This was constructed between 1758 and 1759. It's on the campus of the Lititz Moravian Church, and it served as a Revolutionary War hospital between 1777 and 1778. Also, Dr. William Brown penned the very first pharmacopoeia here, like a pharmacy medical journal. Okay, so this was a Revolutionary War hospital here. This building still exists. The hospital was up here on the third floor. Now, does a spirit named Jeremy haunt the third floor? Electric candles have been unplugged from the wall with that third floor locked up and safe and secure with nobody there and the doors all locked. How do they become unplugged? We have no idea. Other folks that are close to the church have heard things and have seen ghosts up around the third floor of this military hospital. And it's no wonder about 110 soldiers, Revolutionary War soldiers, died upstairs there and are buried just east of the downtown. Okay. The hospital was overcrowded and something called camp fever broke out, and there was just not enough doctors, and the sanitation was not what it is today. So 110 soldiers who were convalescing from Germantown and Brandywine during the Revolutionary War, who came here to convalesce. They arrived here by wagon, and 110 soldiers died. So a lot of tragedy associated with this military Revolutionary War hospital. Then we go to the Corpse House, or like it Kapelken, which means corpse house in German. It was constructed in 1786, 1 year before the Lititz Moravian Church. This is a very unique building. It's one of my absolute favorite buildings in all of Lititz. It's very historic. I understand it's the only one like it left in America, and it served as a temporary repository for the recently deceased. So before they were buried back behind there in the Lititz Moravian Cemetery, they were put here to rest. And believe it or not, although it was constructed in 1786, it was used all the way up regularly until the 1930s. It locks from the inside, and some folks have heard barking noises heard inside when there's nothing inside, no dogs, no animals, no people. People have heard barking noises inside the Lititz Corpse House. The Corpse House is something you can visit today. Typically, it is locked. I would check with the Moravian Church, but if you go out for a walk, it's fine. You can inspect it up close. You can see this really interesting structure in Lititz today. This is a view of the inside of the Corpse House. This is a stone wall. Okay, this is a brick floor. This thing here on the left and on the right, these are called cooling boards. And basically, when someone dies, they would lay them in this cooling board, before rigor mortis set in. That way, they would be uniform in shape. Okay, this smaller one here is here for a small child. That's why it's so much smaller. The one here on the left is for an adult. And this is an old tombstone here in the center. All these things are still here in the Corpse House today. This is an old tombstone. I can't remember the name of the tombstone. I think you can see the crack there. It was replaced at one time. And I would bet money, I'm pretty sure that the person whose tombstone this originally belonged to is buried in the Moravian Cemetery. So that's a rare glimpse inside the 1786 Lititz Moravian Corpse House. Now, this is really fun and interesting. I like to call this place the Lititz Mystery Spot. It's often referred to as the bottomless pit. I'm not going to give away the exact location because it is on private property and it's a little dangerous. I will say it's somewhere in Warwick Township. It's not in downtown Lititz. If you know where it is, that's great. If you don't, I don't feel comfortable giving out the exact location for obvious reasons that I'm about to explain. This bottomless pit is nothing new. In fact, I found newspaper articles about this um, curiosity dating back to 1906. Look at the headline here at the top left: "Pool without a bottom." Here's a snippet here on the bottom left: "The unknown, the mysterious, has always attracted the attention, but why go to the North Pole of Africa to solve the unknown problems when there are mysteries so close to home?" They are talking about this bottomless pit. Here's another article I found on the right. It's describing this thing. It's only a few steps from the road and contains about 200 square feet of surface. The color of the water shows that it is deep, and the water has never been known to freeze over completely. The pool was there as long as the oldest inhabitant can remember. Okay, and whoops, sorry about that. And this goes back to 1906. Each attempt to find the bottom has proven fruitless. True, no scientific method has been used, only the cruder ways. The country folks residing in that area believe that it has no bottom. They tell a story of how a cow fell in and came out at the Lititz Creek far away from there. We will not vouch for this story. Okay, so here it is, the bottomless pit. Okay, the pit of despair, the Lititz mystery spot, whatever you want to call it. Like I said, stories are rampant about this thing. Cows have fell in, as I just mentioned. Someone said that they dropped a fishing line with a sinker and it never reached the bottom. Somebody said one of the things that I also heard it was a mule, not a cow, but a mule. This is really far-fetched, but a mule fell in there and wound up in Australia. I mean, that's a little crazy and kooky, but it just goes to show you the legends and the weird tales associated with this thing called the bottomless pit through the years. Here's more information on the bottomless pit. As I said, it is located in Warwick Township. Here's some of the more tales about this thing on the left, including pigs and cows falling in and ending up days later in a stream in Mannheim or Australia, which I mentioned a minute ago. I also mentioned someone lowered 10 feet of fishing line down there with a heavy weight and it never touched bottom. And as we saw in a previous slide, the last bullet point here, the bottomless pit dates back to at least the 1920s or earlier. So this thing, is it a sinkhole? We don't know, but it's just a real curiosity of our area. Now let's go to Rudy's Dam. You might be familiar with Rudy's Dam. At one time, it was a popular place for people to go ice skating. There was a cabin there. There was a snack bar there. They used to harvest ice there. But unfortunately, at least 2 confirmed drownings many years ago, including when 2 children fell through the ice to their death. By the way, Rudy's Dam, if you live in Lititz, you know where this is. It looks pretty much like this now. I took this picture a couple years ago over winter, so the water, it's not quite cold enough yet for it to freeze, but at the time that I took the picture, there was about 2 inches of ice on the surface. There's also a very popular tale about a green witch of Rudy's Dam. And each year at the stroke of midnight on Halloween, you can see her orange eyes staring back at you from the trees right here. Now, there is a house here. I'm not saying a witch lives there with orange eyes. Okay, I'm not saying that. That's just the tall tale. This house is newer. This dam is way over 100 years old. So maybe when this legend first came out, I would assume that this house was not here and there was a lot more trees. But that's the legend of the Rudy Dam Green Witch. Now, this is another freaky story. This is in Rossville. You might recognize this intersection. You might recognize this church. It was at this spot that somebody saw late at night approximately 100 Revolutionary War soldiers marching along this road. They swear what they saw. They weren't intoxicated or under any drugs or anything. And this group of 100 Revolutionary War soldiers, he saw them marching at night. They were heading west. And eventually, he said, they just kind of disappeared in the night. And after doing some research, I learned that I took this picture, I don't know, a couple years ago in the exact spot where the gentleman was stopped at the stop sign there on the far right of your screen, and he saw the soldiers marching, heading west into Lititz, I guess you could say. This is just a old postcard view of the Keystone Hotel, just an old view of Rossville here further down from where we saw a picture there earlier. And just kind of to show you just an old dirt road view. Now, the Parkview Hotel, let's go back to Lititz. The Parkview was opened by a gentleman named Hiram Holtzhaus in 1901. A fire in 1916 almost burnt down the entire structure. There was a former owner. Her name was Millie Kramer, and she's said to have haunting the structure to this day. Many sounds come from the basement unexplained phenomenon. And apparently, she didn't like when she owned the bar, she didn't like when people swore in her bar. So whenever someone swears in the Parkview Hotel, there is said that that stirs up activity. So is it the ghost of Millie, watching over everyone? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, this is another crazy tale here. Is there a haunted French horn in Lititz? There was a gentleman named Abraham Reinke Beck. Back in the 1800s, he read an entry from an old Lititz diary, and he was interrupted in the middle of him reading by the sound of a French horn flying off the shelf and crashing to the floor without any explanation. Okay, what's interesting though is before the horn flew across the room, Mr. Beck was reading a passage in an old Lititz diary, as I said earlier above, which discussed the possibility that the horn might leave the church. So apparently, this haunted French horn did not like the sound of it leaving the church. And so, obviously, no explanation for this one. But the French horn flew across the room, and this is a picture of the actual French horn that apparently flew across the room. You can still see this French horn today in the music room of the Lititz Moravian Archives. All right, another weird tale. I'm at the corner of Lexington Road and Dridge Hill Road, okay, between Lexington and Brunerville. There is a road called Dridge Hill, as you can see by the sign here on the right of your screen. Down the road, it becomes a wooded area, and many say that there, somewhere in the woods, is a lost cemetery. Uh, there was a schoolmaster named Tritcha, who hung himself in that hollow down there. Now, Dridge is the modern day spelling or pronunciation of Tritch. That's where Dridge Hill gets the name from Tritch, this gentleman who unfortunately hung himself. A short time later, two other men hung themselves in this same wooded area. Then a horse that helped in the assistance of the burial of the third man, the horse hung itself in its stable that night. So whether this wooded area has a curse or what, or maybe it's because of the spirits living in the supposed lost cemetery I talk about down here somewhere, I have no idea. A lot of strange a lot of strange stories come from this area. Now, there are people that live down there, they are good people. So please don't go trespassing. Obviously, you can drive down the road, it's a public road, and I'm sure they're all nice people, but please don't pull into their driveway and start looking for this lost cemetery. Okay, back to downtown Lititz. We're at 69 East Main Street, the John William Rauch House. You might recognize it now. Here on the right-hand side is Nino's Pizza. On the left is Candyology Candy Store. Okay, so who was John William Rauch? Well, he became the owner of this building in about 1820. He was a baker. In fact, he started baking pretzels before Julius Sturgis. And Rauch's original ovens where he baked cakes and, of course, the pretzels are still in existence in the basement of this building underneath Candyology here. They're not in the best shape, but they are still there. So what's it about this building in terms of paranormal activity? Well, let's go to Candyology here. The owner and the previous owner have both heard faucets turning on and off when employees enter the building. So you figure you're gonna unlock the building in the beginning of the morning. You're gonna open up the store, but yet you're hearing faucets running in the bathroom in the back of the store with nobody back there. At least one former owner has also told me firsthand that they have discovered candy thrown about the floor when nobody is there. So if they're not hearing faucets turning on when they're unlocking and opening for the morning, they're finding candy thrown all over the floor when they're opening the store in the morning. There's also a lot of activity upstairs in the apartments, including alarm clocks going off at random times and spoons and forks flying across the room and across the kitchen for no apparent reason. Okay, the Johannes Mueller House, located at 137 East Main Street, part of the Lititz Historical Foundation. The stone portion was built in 1792 there. You see on the right hand of your screen. The wooden structure on the left was built by John George Klein about 1740. And this location also served as Lititz's second post office between 1830 and 1849. Now, the Mueller house has an interesting story to it. If you look at this window right here, okay, you can see where my hour is pointing, the one farthest to the right. Um, there was a neighbor that was walking her dog real late at night, maybe about 10 years ago, around midnight, I'll say. And she was walking past this window right here, and she happens to look in, and inside this window, right by the window, was an old man in a white beard in a colonial style outfit. And she claims that she waved to him and he just kind of nodded and, and that was that. And she kept walking her dog. Well, the next day, the lady who was walking her dog and saw this goes to the Lititz Museum and tells the person at the front desk, hey, I saw your night watchman last evening. It's really great that they really love these buildings enough that they're willing to stay there overnight. Okay, I think you know where this is going. The person at the desk said, well, guess what? We don't have a night watchman. So what the lady saw in this window right through there is unexplained. Okay, so that's one of the most infamous ghost tales associated with Lititz is the man with the white beard and the colonial outfit who was seen right through this window in a rocking chair by this woman real late at night. Okay, continuing west here in downtown Lititz, we're at the Geithner Tannery Building, which is now Main Men, 39 East Main Street, originally built in 1761. At one time, the family lived upstairs. It was a tannery, as I mentioned, but it was also the doctor's office of a gentleman named Dr. J.L. Hertz. And yes, that was his last name. He had a medical practice here during the early 1900s. Okay. And, like a lot of these buildings here in town, there's been some additions and some minor changes, but the original parts still remain underneath this structure here on the right hand of your screen. Now, upstairs, pipe smoke was smelled by customers. Orbs have also been spotted, as well as a dark figure and dark shapes through the corner of people's eyes upstairs, and has been seen walking around, and they've also heard footsteps. And also, at one time, a shadowy figure wearing a hat has also been spotted upstairs. Okay. Is it Dr. Hertz? We're not sure. We're not exactly sure who it is. Okay, now we're at the Moravian House Antique Shop. Okay, it's at 122 East Main, built in 1854. Years ago, it was known as Wooley's Store. And of course, a variety of businesses have been there through the years, including an antique shop, a carpet shop, and even a liquor store, if you remember. But what's interesting is I'm going to direct you to something that very, very strange and creepy and unexplained that's in the basement of this building, and it is still there today. Okay. Now, we all know who John Sutter is. We talked about John Sutter earlier when we talked about the hotel. Him and his wife spent the last few years of their lives in Lititz. He died in 1880. She died in 1881. But for some strange reason, her tomb is in the basement of this building. Now, is it really her tomb? Let me go back here. Probably not, but it's still a creepy tale that's kind of unexplained. In the basement of that building is this shape that sort of looks like a coffin. There's a handle here, they're metal handle here, metal handle there. And we'll see here in the next slide, there is the name etched. You can kind of see it here, Anna Sutter. Now, why would someone bury Anna Sutter? She died during the summer, not during the winter. Why would someone supposedly temporarily bury her in the basement of this building? And if it's not a burial site, why is her name etched in cement? And this etching, these letters aren't new, they're old. They go back to about the 1800s or so, at least 100 years. Why would someone etch her name there? We know for a fact that her, as well as John Sutter, her husband, are both buried in the Lititz Moravian Cemetery. That's a fact. Was Anna stored here temporarily? Again, no answer. No, it's unexplained. We're not sure why. I'm going to go to the next slide here, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but you can see the A there in the center of your screen. You can see the metal handle, and if you look closely, you can make out the ANNASUTTER. Okay, so that's a close-up of the letters. Here is a view of the supposed tomb. Okay, it's about maybe, I don't know, 2 feet deep. You can still open it there, as you can see. I received special permission to go down there and take these photos by the building owner. These are metal bars that extend here. Okay, you can see here, there's 3. There's one there, and one down here. So what is it? We don't know. Why is it in the shape of a coffin? What's it doing down there? And most importantly, why is Anna Sutter's name etched on the top? No idea. We probably will never know. I've done tons of newspaper searches. Like I said, she died during the summer. There's no mention of this anywhere in any record or newspaper I've ever found anywhere. The only thing that ever comes up when you search Anna Sutter's tomb in newspaper search is an article I did on this exact tomb about 10 years ago for the Lititz Record Express. And as I said earlier, here is the place that we know they're buried at, General Sutter and Anna Sutter. They're both buried here in the Lititz Moravian Church Cemetery. Now let's go to Brickerville, and we're going to visit the 1754 checkerboard house, which was built by Johann Valentine Stober. This house was also referred to as the Snake House. Is this house cursed? Well, the former owner had a big problem trying to get rid of snakes that would overtake the house. The former owner has also heard unexpected noises and bumps and footsteps heard throughout the house at night. This is now a private house. You can't go inside of it. It is a beautiful house. You can see it if you're driving along 322. But a lot of interesting stories having to do with the 1754 checkerboard house there in Brickerville in Elizabeth Township. Just a quick aside here. I want to talk just for a minute about some of the newspaper articles that came out in the 50s during the atomic age in Lititz. Flying saucers were seen here, um, and you can see the article here on the left from 1950. People saw flying saucers. A farmer saw flying saucers. They were flying at 20-degree angles, and they would sweep through the sky. Almost all of them traveled from west to east, but occasionally only one would come hurtling toward them westward. Here's another newspaper article from 1957 on the right side of your screen. Uh, a local housewife around Lititz saw an unidentified flying object or flying saucer at 6 p.m. on that Wednesday night. It appeared in the sky to the north, adding that she was certain it wasn't a vapor trail from a jet plane. She told her husband of the object, but he dismissed it lightly the following day. The Lancaster woman said the saucer seemed to have hovered over downtown Lancaster. Now they're talking about a lady who also saw the same thing in Lancaster. Okay, so here are just two reports of flying saucers that took place that were seen apparently in Lititz during the 1950s. Now, another newspaper article I want to tell you about. Okay, War of the Worlds in 1938, which shocked the nation when they thought that the U.S. was going to be invaded by men from Mars. And of course, that all had to do with Orson Welles' fake broadcast on the radio. And a lot of people were listening to that or tuning in halfway, and they actually thought an invasion was taking place. Well, Lititz was not free from that scare, as you can see from the article on the left. This is a newspaper article from the Lititz Record Express. The horror broadcast, which sent thousands scurrying from apartment houses last Sunday when they thought the end of the world was close at hand, did not spare Lititz in its frightening stride. And I'm not going to read every single thing here, but it was a real panic. Several residents of Lititz, while visiting the nearby town of Columbia, saw a crowd of more than 20 people gathered who were planning to drive west to avoid the men from Mars. So again, you might have heard of this broadcast. It's really famous. I listen to it every time around Halloween. And yeah, it scared the nation, including those in Lititz. Okay, let's go to Rossville and talk about the White Swan Hotel, which was built in 1790 at the intersection there. It was the very first structure in Rossville, built by Philip Roth as a community gathering place and tavern. It is said that former owner Anna Weber, her ghost has been seen crossing past the doorway of the front of the building, and you can see it right here. The doorway, you can sort of see it anyway. There's two doors here, but it's the doorway on the left that she's been spotted. People have also reported utensils flying in the kitchen, and kitchen doors swing open without anyone touching them or going near them. Okay, another creepy tale having to do with the Moravian Cemetery, the tomb of Thomas Utley, which you can see today. Excuse me, Thomas Utley lived from 1751 until 1771. He is buried in God's Acre, which is the older section of the Lititz Moravian Cemetery there. When Utley was buried, the grave digger heard 3 knocks, which seemed to come from inside Utley's coffin. When it was open, Utley was discovered to still be dead. They later determined that the sound came from the pressure of ground on the coffin lid, which created shifting and created that sound of the fresh green wood used for his coffin. Somehow the shifting of the green wood once it was buried to earth, whether it was, I don't know, making a sound or creaking, they thought that Utley was trying to get out. But alas, like I said, it was opened and he was declared that he was still dead. Matthew 25 Thrift Shop in downtown Lititz, 48 East Main Street, built about 1782, was originally the business for a gentleman named Matthias Schutte, who made chip hats for the community. It was also known as Doster's Store for many decades. And if you grew up in Lititz, if you're young at heart, you might remember Doster's Store. Now, employees have heard noises in the basement of the thrift shop here. One employee also saw a scene from the 1800s unfold in front of her, well, out of the corner of her eye. It was a party scene. It was about 8 people with drinks in hand. They were all dressed in 1800s attire. They were laughing. They were having fun. They were teasing each other. This lady saw this whole scene that she just didn't see one ghost. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw this whole scene unfold. So that's kind of crazy. Okay, everybody, that is the program. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your donation to the Lititz Historical Foundation.